as she says, recording in progress. So Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, I'm going to share my screen.
That's what I was going to just do. Say it should be right now.
So you'll notice it's kind of like
Can you hear?
an eternal black hole behind Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, because this is the holiday, the month where there are no holidays. So we're kind of in this vacuum of time where we're not prepared. Well, we are preparing for what's coming later, but it's an entire month after so many holidays and so many foci that we're able to just be present in the month and let Cheshvan happen around us. So we'll begin as we have been beginning, and I hope if you attended the healing service, this was part of the music that I used that afternoon, because you talk about taking a nature and meditation course and how it really raised your awareness of what was around you, and I find that this setting of Asher Yatzar does something so similar, to turn ourselves to that inside of ourselves, which is perfect, and that which is also broken. I thank you for my life, body, and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. Whoa, 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 Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. Whoa, 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 whoa. I thank you for my life, body, and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as this gift I give to you. You know, Sharon, I'm thinking so much about your comment before about you learned to meditate and about nature, and that it really opened your eyes and changed your perspective. And so too, I think that that's true of prayer. I think that's true of study. I want to honor this time that you've set aside to do some study, to hopefully gain a little new perspective on an aspect of your life. I hope that that's an outcome from our time together. So we'll continue with the blessing for Torah study. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongues. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongues. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech. Oh boy, I've changed the key. Baruch Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongues. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongues. See, there you go. I was just showing you that we're all a little bit perfect and a little broken too. See, I can even make a mistake in the beginning of my leading. All right, so our woman of the month is Rebecca. And this has been a lot of fun preparing. Unlike so many of our other women, we actually get a really in-depth narrative of who Rebecca was. So let us begin. In Genesis 22:23, we learn Bethuel being the father of Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. So Rebekah in this moment becomes the only daughter, the only matriarch, the only female birth recorded in Torah. So there's something quite special about Rebekah. She is not your everyday, beautiful, difficult to bear a child woman of Torah. So here it sets Rebekah in the tribe of Abraham, which is going to be important down the road. And directly after this, Sarah dies. So let's think back to last month. What do we remember from Sarah's death? How did it fit into the context of her story? What killed Sarah? What happened? What narrative happened just before Sarah dies? It was a while ago. We didn't have, it's been 2 months. Just before she dies is the binding of Isaac, right? And that we learn that Abraham takes finally, he has a son and he takes him up to the mountain and is going to sacrifice him for God. And we know what happens. We blew the shofar. We brought this story back to our memories during Yom Kippur. So directly following this, we get right before Sarah dies, Rebecca is born, and that's going to become very important. So Rebecca's story really begins when it's time for marriage. Okay. So after Abraham has secured a burial plot for Sarah and mourns her death, he turns to his next focus, which is finding his son a wife. So let's find out how Abraham is going to go about this and what is important in finding a wife for Isaac. And Abraham said to the senior servant of his household who had charge of all that he owned, "Put your hand under my thigh." This was how an oath was taken. "And I will make you swear by the eternal, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell." Boo, don't want to intermarry, "but will go to the land of my birth and get a wife for my son Isaac." And the servant said to him, "What if the woman does not consent to follow me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the land from which you came?" Abraham answered him, "On no account will you take my son back there. The eternal, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from my native land, who promised me an oath saying, 'I will assign this land to your offspring,' God will send an angel before you, and you will get a wife for my son from there. And if the woman does not consent to follow you, you shall then be clear of this oath to me, but do not take my son back there." All right. So Abraham sends his most trusted servant to take on this very large task. Abraham demands 2 things of a wife. The first, it needs to be from his tribe of birth, and she must come freely. Interesting. Modern discussions of consent, and here we have an interesting moment of that in Torah. So what do we do with this repetition? Isaac will not go. You cannot take Isaac. Isaac is staying right here. Don't even think about it. Don't ask. Isaac is not leaving. Isaac stays with me right here. Strike you as odd? It's interesting. This is a really It's stated twice, very boldly, very clearly, he is not going with you. So let's talk about Isaac for a second. All right, what do we know about Isaac? What has happened in Isaac's life up until now?
He had a traumatic experience by his father almost killing him.
Yep, his father tried to murder him. That's traumatic. Hold on to that. What else what do we know about Isaac's life? What just happened that led to Abraham looking for a wife for his son?
Sarah died.
Mom's dead. Mom just died. So dad, who tried to murder me, is still here, but mom, the loving mother, has just died. All right. Let's go back a little bit farther. Isaac was born to geriatric parents. This isn't like in their 40s, they had children a little bit later in life. His parents were like 90 and 100 when he was born. All right. That can't be easy as a child. Imagine, and I know there are people your age who take on grandchildren as children. This cannot be an easy task for the grandparent or for the child. It's a very different life, I would imagine. And also, he watched his half-brother be expelled from his house. Who was that? Ishmael. Sarah sees Ishmael and Isaac playing, and Sarah says, oh my God, I can't handle this. Get her out of here with the kid. So his half-brother has been expelled. His father tried to kill him. His mother just died. And his parents are really, really old. Does this sound like a stable guy? Yeah, I like the expressions from everyone. Isaac is really not set up to be a strong leader. And someone used the word traumatized. And I was looking yesterday, what are what are the symptoms associated with PTSD? When I say that, what comes to mind? What might be the challenges that he faces?
Fright.
Fright.
Violence.
Maybe some violence. Yeah.
Be insecurity.
Yep. I'm thinking about trust is probably a very difficult thing for him.
Mm-hmm. Now, who do you believe?
Mm-hmm.
And any mother at 90, she'd make the Guinness Book of World Records. So
Yeah, well, Sarah did.
Yeah.
She certainly did. So now when you see the duplicity of Abraham saying, my son's not going with you, is Abraham protecting his son? What do you think? What do you think the insistence might be about?
Call from 300611192000000.
Somebody's getting a call.
Yeah, me, and I'm just shutting it off.
I think maybe he'd be afraid that his son would go and he'd be left alone after everything had happened.
Okay. So maybe a little bit selfish.
Selfish, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Let's also consider for a moment, in order to be old enough for him to be seeking out a wife, we often think about the binding of Isaac as a small child. Not necessarily. This is a grown man. This is a grown man that we're talking about here. So maybe there's some additional protection that Abraham is feeling. Maybe he realized he pushed this person, this son of his, too far. But definitely, Isaac is actually the only patriarch who never leaves the homestead. The other patriarchs, right? They go out, they travel, they go from town to town. Isaac stays put. Isaac does not have a worldview. All right, so what do we think now? We've got a patriarch who's really not set up to be a strong leader, who's potentially experiencing PTSD, but we still go Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. But then we go Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So hold on to that idea for a bit. We need to meet Rebecca because understanding that helps us understand who Rebecca is potentially. All right. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and set out, taking with him all the bounty of his master, and he made his way to Aram Naharaim, to the city of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down by the well outside the city at evening time, the time when women come out to draw water. And he said, O eternal God of my master Abraham, grant me good fortune this day and deal graciously with my master Abraham. Here I stand by the spring as the daughters of the townsmen come out to draw water. Let the maiden to whom I say, please lower your jar that I may drink, and who replies, drink, and I will also water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have decreed for your servant Isaac. Thereby shall I know that you have dealt graciously with my master. So Abraham set up a task for him. What were the two things? She needs to be from my people, and she needs to be willing to go. Well, the servant is like, okay, how do I find the one though? That's not a lot to go by. So he sets up another litmus test for finding this woman, and sets it up as I don't want to say challenge, but as a request to the God of Abraham. And goes beyond what Abraham had asked for. So what qualities has he added with this request?
Sounds like he's added kindness.
Okay.
Also very compassionate. She's watering the camels. So she's very compassionate that way.
Mm-hmm. So we got kindness, compassion.
What else? I'm not sure what another one is, but what stands out to me is that usually in the Bible, they are looking for beauty, and this is not something that he is upset about. This is not part of his.
Yeah. That you would have thought, oh, let me find the most beautiful maiden in the land. Yeah, that's the story of Esther, right?
Right.
That's the quality that the king is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, here, don't get me wrong, Rebecca is described as beautiful. And later on, when she actually meets Isaac, he falls off his camel. She's so beautiful. So don't worry, we still know that she's beautiful, but I appreciate that the servant is aware, maybe even more so than Abraham, of what the needs for Isaac are. So, right, think again about who Isaac is and what kind of wife he's going to need. Compassion, kindness,
Strength.
Excellent. So say it again, Lori.
Nurturing.
All of these things, right? So Abraham's thinking about long-term future. She needs to be able to bear a child that is from the right family line, and she's got to be willing to come. We're going to talk a little bit about why that piece, but the servant is actually rather thoughtful about what Isaac's needs are going to be. Okay. So Rebecca came out with her jar on her shoulder. The maiden was very beautiful, see, a virgin whom no man had known, always good to know. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up. The servant ran toward her and said, please, let me sip a little water from your jar. Here comes the test. Drink, my lord, she said, and she quickly lowered her jar upon her hand and let him drink. Let's see what else she does. When she had let him drink his fill, she said, I will also draw for your camels. Woohoo! Yeah. Until they finished drinking. Quickly emptying her jar into the trough, she ran back to the well to draw and she drew for all his camels. Hey, you asked God, give me a sign. I need a woman who's going to give me water and feed my camels. And boom, she appears. Clearly, he knew where to go.
Better than J-date.
You're right. You're right. We should. We'll have to create a dating service called At the Well.
Yes.
I like that.
Lori has a question, Cantor.
Oh, go ahead, Lori.
How could he tell that she's a virgin? I mean, is it because her hair is down, or up, or covered, or is there some sign?
It's an interesting question. I don't have a perfect answer for that. It probably has something to do with her dress. Because theoretically, the only way she wouldn't be a virgin is if she was married. And if she was married, she'd probably have certain jewelry on.
Mm.
So I would go in that direction because we'll find that out later. Yeah, otherwise, I mean, it's always a little, but how do we know anybody is Jewish when they walk through the doors? You know, we don't, nobody does a circumcision test before you walk in. So it's a good question. How do we know one another are Jewish? Is there a secret handshake?
That wasn't my question.
No, I know. How do we know she's a virgin? But how do we know anything about one another is kind of my point.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a reasonable comment. So the camels drink. So let's talk about these camels. And who was it? Barbara, who said strength. Now, were you talking strength of character or physically strong?
I think both.
Mm-hmm.
You have not to not be afraid of a man, a strange man walking up to you and asking you for something, and then strong enough to say, yeah, sure, I'll do that, but I'll also take care of your animals who need water.
Right. So let's talk about these camels, right? Camels are not like a puppy who, you know, lick, 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 I've had enough water. A camel to refill after a long journey takes up to 20 gallons of water. And there were 10 camels in the bunch. So we are talking about potentially 200 gallons of water to feed his, to fill up his camels. And it says she ran back to the well to draw, and she drew up for all his camels. So the way wells worked at this time, it wasn't like, oh, just drop the bucket and pull it back up. It was kind of like you had to like go down. It was a hike. It was a major task to go down these slopes to get to the water, draw it up and bring it back. And it should, you know, you can kind of picture Rebecca came out with the jar on her shoulder. This is not only a strong woman in character, this is a strong strong woman. So the servants' needs were met. So now we need to find out, will Abraham's needs be met in her? So the servant is offered to stay in her family home. Obviously, it's Abraham's family home. So we've got one of Abraham's needs met. So let's find out what happens when they get to her house. So I had scarcely finished praying. This is the servant recounting his experience from earlier. So now he's speaking to Rebecca's father and brother. So he's got to get them on his side. I had scarcely finished praying in my heart when Rebecca came out with her jar on her shoulder and went down to the spring and drew. And I put the ring on her nose and the bands on her arms. Then I bowed low in homage to the Eternal and blessed the Eternal, the God of my master Abraham, who led me on the right way to get the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now, if you mean to treat my master with true kindness, tell me, and if not, tell me also, that I may turn right or left. Then Laban and Bethuel, right? We learned Bethuel is the father from that first passage about Rebecca being born. Laban is her brother. Then Laban and Bethuel answered, the matter was decreed by the Eternal. We cannot speak to you good or bad. Here is Rebecca before you. Take her and go, and let her be a wife to your master's son. as the Eternal has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed low to the ground before the Eternal. All right, an agreement has been made. God is central to finding Rebecca. God is coming, the prayers to bring Rebecca. And when the servant is speaking to her father and her brother, God is present in this conversation as well. The servant makes sure of that, because that's how he gets, he provides proof that this is coming from God, that it's not really a conversation. God has set her upon us because I prayed for her. And isn't that amazing that the God of Abraham, the God of that Adonai has made this happen? So I want to turn us for a moment. I actually just read The Red Tent recently, which I know is not a new book, but I'm curious who has read it. Okay, so imagine it's been a while. Do you remember how Rebecca is portrayed in The Red Tent? She's she's like the master midwife, and she's portrayed not as a follower of Adonai, but as a woman still connected to her husband, is clearly worshiping Adonai, but she is about the like Mother Earth and just a little bit more connected to something of a polytheistic sort of way of being. I found her to be kind of like a sorceress a bit, in her healing methods and just how she was portrayed. And from this passage, we get a very clear picture that Rebecca is from a home that worships one God, that the reason why they're willing to let her go is because this is Abraham, who has been blessed by the Eternal. It is his household, and so too in this household, it is Adonai whom they worship. So I put that out there because, as I said, I recently read it, and I was reading some different critiques of the book and reviews of the book. And it was begging the question, is the Red Tent Midrash? Is it an expansion of gaps in the story of Dinah, really, but she goes through all of her mothers? Or is it just fiction that happens to have characters from the Torah? That the author of this article said that Midrash is filling in the gaps within Torah, but filling them in a way that moves Jewish practice forward and Jewish understanding, and that the Red Tent, while a lovely story, it actually takes the Jewish out of our matriarchs rather than enhances the Jewish within them. And I just thought that was a really interesting point. And as I was preparing for Rebecca, I just wanted to pass that along. I thought it was an interesting point that it made. So maybe you'll be inspired to take another look at the Red Tent, which actually I did the book club this morning with some people this morning, and they had read it earlier, like maybe 20 years ago when it first came out, and that in their rereading of it, they experienced it very differently. So it was just an interesting conversation that I thought I'd pass along. So we still haven't answered the question, is Rebecca going to come freely? So we come here. Rebecca and her willingness. The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebecca, and he gave presents to her brother and her mother. That's always a smart thing to do. Then he and the men with him ate and drank, and they spent the night. When they arose the next morning, he said, "Give me leave to go to my master." But her brother and her mother said, let the maiden remain with us some 10 days, then you may go. And he said to them, "Do not delay me. Now that the Eternal has made my errand successful, give me leave that I may go to my master. And they said, let us call the girl and ask for her reply. They called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will. So they sent off their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, O sister, may you grow into thousands of myriads. May your offspring seize the gates of their foes. Then Rebekah and her maidens arose, mounted the camels, and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and went on his way. Ding, 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 ding. We've got all the qualifications for a wife for Isaac.
Wow.
All right. We've got the progeny for Abraham. We've got the sensitivity that the servant needs to find for Isaac. So let's take a deeper look at this blessing. All right. So as I just said, the blessing to Rebekah is, and they blessed Rebekah and said to her, O sister, may you grow into thousands of myriads. May your offspring seize the gates of their foes. So just before Sarah dies, after the binding of Isaac, God makes a blessing to Abraham. God makes a promise to Abraham, and it's the following. I will bestow my blessing upon you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands on the seashore, and your descendants shall seize the gates of their foes. What is similar? What is different?
First one is blessings to Rebekah. The second one is the blessings for all Jewish mankind. Right?
Well, we've taken it on. Yes, we've taken it on. Specifically, it's a blessing to Abraham. How do the actual blessings compare?
Well, they're telling her to may your offspring seize the gates, and let them be aggressive enough to protect you. That the children will protect the parents, maybe?
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know.
Is that in one or in both?
I think the first one mainly to Rebekah.
No,
Well, here, no, the second one too, and your descendants shall seize the gates and their foes. Yeah, both of them.
Okay, they both seem to have something about overcoming foes.
Right, right.
what do they mean by growing into thousands of myriads? I'm trying to decide what they mean by that.
I think they mean make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands on the seashore.
So it's the same blessing, basically, just
I
worded
think
differently.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very similar blessing. They're both saying, be fruitful and multiply, essentially. But particularly that they end with the same language, I think is really important here. If the blessing to Abraham is the same or very, very similar as the blessing to Rebekah, what do you think Torah is trying to tell us about these two leaders of our biblical people?
That family, their descendants should be very important to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they should raise their offspring in a way that they will continue on with Judaism.
We'll give them the strength. Yeah, they're giving them strength.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on.
Okay, hold on to those thoughts. So what exactly does Rebekah say? Vatomer elech. They called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. So at this point, Rebekah has no idea whom she's agreed to marry. She knows that she's covered in jewels. There's a large caravan of camels, so life won't be that bad. And she knows that the master's son is from her people, from the people who are followers of Adonai. She has no idea who she's marrying or who the master is at this point. Nobody asked. All right. So there's someone else who is told to do something, and the response is very similar. Abraham is told, Lech Lecha, go out from this place, from your father's homeland, to the place that I will show you. Abraham asks no questions. Abraham packs up the camels and his wife, and they're out. Lech Lecha, go out from yourself, go out from this place. This root is the same. If you look, Vatomer Elech is I will go. Lech Lecha. That's the root for to go. All right. Again, a comparison between Rebecca and Abraham. Rebecca is stepping into the role of Abraham and Sarah for the next generation. Remember who Isaac was. Isaac is traumatized. Isaac is, hold on, let me stop sharing my screen a sec. Isaac is managing. And then we have Rebecca, and Torah is pointing us in a number of different ways to bring Abraham and Rebecca into similar language, similar responses. Think as well at the well when she fed all of the camels. Think back to when Abraham at the tent welcomes in the three strangers and feeds them his best food and washes their feet. There's a hospitality to both of them that is coming through for me. So she's a little bit like Sarah and she's a little bit like Abraham. So like Sarah, she's going to be an instrument for bringing about God's promise of multitudes, right? She's got to be involved for the next generation to come through. Like Abraham, she voluntarily uprooted her life because God was involved and said, this is what's going to happen. Like Abraham, her hospitality goes above and beyond. So we've got Abraham's two conditions. They're fulfilled. The servants are fulfilled. Rebecca has characteristics to link Abraham to Jacob. Poor Isaac. Poor Isaac. So in some ways, as we study Rebecca, we learn who she is. But we have to understand who Isaac is to understand who Rebecca has to be. Now, Rebecca's story does continue. I'm not going to go into all of the details. I'll give you kind of the highlight reel. Once she becomes a wife, she does take on the wife role in more traditional ways. Like I said before, Isaac falls off his camel when he sees Rebecca, literally knocked off his feet by her beauty. Their marriage, they talk about him being fully in love with her. Because the babies in Genesis need to be gifts from God, Rebecca also faces infertility, just like Sarah before her and Rachel after. Rebecca prays directly to God. So that's a bit of a personal connection. Rebecca continues to show her strength and dedication to the promises set by God as her sons and their birthrights create drama. All right. She acts cunningly for her desired outcome, right? Jacob and Esau and the problem with the birthright and the firstborn. And she's gotta really play Isaac to get the right son situated for the right task. Her final act in Torah is to secure a wife for Jacob from the house of Abraham. Sound familiar? Yeah.
Same thing.
Unlike so many of our other women, Rebecca's narrative is compelling and really played out. So, what is surprising about Rebecca? Go ahead, Barbara.
What surprised me most is they asked her if she wanted to go. Talk about women's rights. You think about even today in some societies, you don't have choices. And there they said, yeah, would you like to go? That amazed me.
Yeah.
Why is it important to ask people things instead of tell people things?
It gives them some kind of feeling of that they know what the hell they're doing.
Ownership of their own life,
Ownership.
autonomy.
Right.
These are essential characteristics in human that have, I mean, most of you are parents, right? Like, how well did it go when you told your children to do things versus, I don't know, what's fail all around. We respond better when things are our idea. And questions lead us to come to answers much better than demands. So again, you know, thoughts about this character of Rebecca, what inspires you about her? How would you classify her? How would you describe her?
Strong, first of all.
Still strong. So, right, we got that from before.
I think she's willing to take a chance. She
Mm.
probably thought this all out and said, yes, I will try my best and do this.
It wasn't an arranged marriage.
Well,
She-
an arranged
courageous.
marriage with her consent, I guess. It was arranged. It was arranged by God.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So she must have a strong belief in God and wants to follow what God has set in her path.
Mm-hmm.
She's courageous.
Yeah, I think courageous is a really, courageous, bold.
Mhm.
And this notion that she really is the link of this generation more so than Isaac is a really interesting way to think about a female from Torah. And after so many months of women who are kind of victims of their own circumstance, you know, it's interesting to read about Rebecca and broaden what a woman's narrative can be in biblical times.
Amazing.
Yeah. Final thoughts, comments, questions?
I think I've said this before, how important it must be, and I don't know if this is done, when teaching children, maybe teenage girls or pre-teenage girls, to use our women of the Bible to help them become strong. Use them as role models. I always think of that. I don't know. I didn't go to Hebrew school, and I'm not so sure. Well, you know what? Not only girls and boys too, to make sure that the women of the Bible are role models.
And I respect.
And when they're not role models,
When they're
what
not.
can we learn from who they're not just as much as who they are?
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
Yeah. I forget, I had a teacher once who said, you're going to learn more from observing people you don't like what they do than you do. If that makes sense. I'm not sure I'm
Yes.
communicating that well, but
Yes.
yeah.
You learn how not to be.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, with that in mind, you mentioned, you know, you never learned, you didn't go to religious school. Shameless plug for the adult B'nai Mitzvah class, which the rabbi has just started. It's not too late. If you're interested in that, get in touch with me or get in touch with him. We have some graduates from the class here, but shameless plug, felt the need to mention it. All right, so let's move into our celebration of Rosh Chodesh. I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so as I mentioned, it is a month with no holidays, so there's no reason to lessen our joy this month. So we jump right in. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, oje halelucha sela. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, oje halelucha sela. Ashrei, ashrei, ashrei yoshvei veitecha, Ashrei, 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 Yoshvei Veitecha. Happy are those who dwell in your house. They will sing your praises forever. Happy are those who dwell in your house. They will sing your praises forever. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha. Oje hallelujah Selah. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha. Oje hallelujah Selah. Ashrei, Ashrei, Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha. Ashrei, Ashrei, Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha. Happy are those who dwell in your house. They will sing your praises forever. Happy are those who dwell in your house. They will sing your praises forever.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Come on, click. Uh-oh, I'm frozen.
Uh-oh.
Hold on, let me try that again. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likro et hallel.
Beautiful.
It's frozen again. That's weird. There we go. Beit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Beit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Hayta Yehuda lekodsho, Yisrael mamshlotav. Hayam rav ayanos, Hayarden yisov le'achor. Heharim rakedu he'elim, Gevaot kivnei tzon. Beit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Beit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Remember, this is call and repeat. Malecha hayam.
Malacha hayam.
Itanus. Hayarden. Tiso le'achor. Eharim. Tirkedu ha'elim. Gevaot. Ivnei tzon. Bilifnei Adon. Uli aretz. Milifnei. Eloah Yaakov. Hahofchi hatzor. Agamayim. Kalamish. Lemaino mayim. All right, put on your cowboy hats, folks. Call and repeat as well. Hodu. Ladonai. Together. Kito. Ki. Leolam. ki le'olam chasto. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yomarna, Yomarna, Yisrael, ki le'olam chasto. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yomruna, Yomruna, Beit Aharon ki le'olam Ileolam chasto. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yomruna, Yomruna, Irei Adonai ki le'olam Ileolam chasto. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yai-da-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da, yai-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. All right, so we take this moment before we conclude with the words of hallelujah. We take this moment to consider our intention for the month. A month with no holidays, a month where we choose our focus. Perhaps it is from Rebecca, from our matriarch. Take a moment as we sing Ozi V'Zim Ra'iyah, and then I'll share first, and if anybody wants to add. Ozi V'Zim Ra'iyah, Vayehi li Lishua. May I be a little bit more like Rebecca, a little bit more trusting that my path is going in a direction that I can trust. It's when opportunities present themselves, I can trust a little bit more. Ozi V'Zim Ra'iyah, Vayehi li Lishua. Would anybody else like to share an intention for the month of Cheshvan? Go ahead, Sharon.
During a month when there are no Jewish holidays, may I be more aware of how beautiful Judaism is and practice it without the holidays.
Well, and a shameless plug for Shabbat, the holiday that keeps on giving.
Yes.
Ozi V'Zim Ra'iyah, Vayehi li Lishua. Would anybody else like to share an intention for Cheshvan? A kavanah for Cheshvan. Go ahead, Linda.
To be more spiritual.
Or what?
To be more spiritual.
Hopefully inspired a little bit by Rebecca and her spiritual faith and all of those.
Can it be something? Can it be something silly?
Absolutely. Make us laugh, Barbara.
Clean my craft room.
Ah.
You could see it. If I turn this around, you'd plats.
Barbara, your daughter-in-law is a professional organizer. She'd be happy
Who
to help.
is? Who is?
My daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, you have to see this room. No, don't say that.
Oh, no. Yeah.
All right.
Some people look at that kind of task and go, ooh. Some people look at that task and just turn around.
Did I show you? You want to see?
Well, now we're kind of intrigued.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
This is part of the junk I'm working with. Whoop. Whoop.
She did my garage. She can do anything.
That's all the crazy stuff I have.
Cool.
In half a day.
Oy vey. All right. Well, I'm going to talk to you.
I'll come over, Barb.
Yeah, right.
Ozi V'Zim Ra'iyah, Vayehi li Lishua. Anyone else? A kavana for Cheshvan? Go ahead, Melissa.
I just would like to say that I'm gonna be sure and enjoy the nicer weather and be thankful for every day.
Amen. Amen. Helene, you want to share?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say, but we didn't go through the whole story of the twins and stuff like that. And I have always made it a practice to never treat one child or one grandchild different than the other. And I think that's an important lesson that we should learn in life, that you know, you have to treat everybody equally.
Thank you for reminding us about part of Rebecca's story that maybe isn't the brightest light on her, but is still part of her story.
When I read that originally, that was the first thing that came to my mind, and we didn't go far enough to learn that part of the story, but you know.
Well, this is the first female where we really couldn't get through her entire narrative in depth, which says something about her as as a character to learn from. And I kind of appreciate that about her. All right. Any other sharing of kava note for Cheshvan? We'll sing Oziva Zimra'iyah one more time, and then we'll finish off with the transcendental word of praise. Hallelujah. So, Oziva Zimra'iyah Vayhi li Lishua. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. May this month of Cheshvan be everything that it can be. May we find some rest in this month without big holidays, and find joy in the little ones that we get to have every week. A Chodesh Tov to everyone, and I thank you for coming to learn today.
Thank
Yes.
you, Cantor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cantor.
My pleasure.
Thanks.